All right, Shalom Israel, Yahweh Shemel Shah, Thumb to the brothers, Yahweh Shemal Latam Bashim Yahweh Shah to the sisters. This is the ISUPK, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, established in 1969 on 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. We are led by Commander Jimmy Yohana. We ain't affiliated with no other organizations. Israel, remember to pay your tithes, pay your camp fees, man. You got a lot of work that needs to get done, and a lot of people that ain't willing to dedicate themselves to this, such as some of these classes that we teach. We got in ISUPK Milwaukee, where we're coming to you live from. Mondays, we got history class with Officer Canania. Tuesdays, brotherhood class with Officer Ayar. Wednesday is a law class with Officer Kala. Thursday, scripture breakdown class with Captain Debar Mott. Friday, we're going to start initiating Shawan Qadash with myself, Priest and Officer 1000 among the bar. So real quick, anybody that might be checking in with us on social media, if you can read this, this is kind of at a medium text on our new used dry erase board. So just to see if this is legible to you from the distance that it's at, we're going to work on the lighting. Anybody paying attention to class right now? Make a comment, drop a 1 if you can read it, drop a 2 if you just can't. We got a good camera. We're just working on the lighting right now to make sure that there isn't, I'm saying, like this glare in the background. Like, I don't want that. So trying to eliminate that. Like, share, subscribe to the content. Otherwise, we're going to get right into it. So, ISUPK Shawan Qadash, where we study the Hebrew language, we put into practice. So today, for just some like the beginning classes that we're going to start having here in Milwaukee. Right now, we're just going to be going over the alphabet. And you know, even if you look at that word alphabet, aleph, as they would say, I think in Yiddish or Greek, aleph and then bet, which would have been the first 2 characters of the Hebrew alphabet, which is actually there's a breakdown of it. Give me 1 second. Aleph and Bayat. So it's not aleph. We didn't have that F, that PH F sound, or that actual letter F sound. We didn't have that in the Hebrew language. So it would have been Aleph Bayat. So Aleph Bayat, alphabet, is what these bastards had turned our customs, our culture into something that would fit their linguistics, because they're coming from all different kind of backgrounds, which is why if you can speak German and you can speak Yiddish, you can have a conversation with a Nazi. Ain't that kind of funny? But a little irony. All right, so we're gonna erase that. We're gonna start off. Now I also think that I need to get bigger markers, broader markers. They seem a little maybe too small for the board, and I want to make sure that we can that everybody can see it with clarity. So as we go, any criticisms will be taken with the modicum of brotherhood and sisterhood. You know what I'm saying? Take all in consideration. So we're going to start off with ah. So now they would say in English, let's do it like this. In English, you're going to see A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. See if that looks. You see that more or less. So now, if you can also recognize the color, this is in red. Right now, I wrote that in red. In English, they always read from the left to the right. In Hebrew, and I believe even in Arabic and other dialects, and I guess you could consider it ancient cultures, we read from the right to the left. That's not exclusive to just the Hebraic alphabet or writing system, like worldwide. Like it's not just exclusive to our customs and practices. There are other nations that do it the same way too. Now in Hebrew, our characters, like, so they call these letters, we would call ours characters because it is pictographic. You go to the roots of it, the Paleo Hebrew is pictographic. So we're going to go over the Paleo Hebrew mainly today, but we're also going to get into the Assyrian script as we had used during captivity under the Assyrian Empire. So using their style, how would I say it? Using their style, their kind of pen, their script for our alphabet, for our writing system. It's not based off of theirs, but because of that separation of culture being made, and what I'm talking about is our separation from our culture and having to adapt theirs, using their script, using their writing system for our language, for our dialogue, or a dialect, I should say, Slavic. So now in Hebrew, yeah, we definitely need bigger markers. In Hebrew, our characters going from the right to the left. So now again, we got A, B, C, D. We're going to be doing effectively the same thing. A, ba, ga, da. Just going from the right to the left. So, A, ba, ga, da, ha, wa, za, ha. Now, this is not to be confused with the letter K. Today, like you might see it in the word character, where it's like a CH, a CHA. It's always pretty much always followed up by a CHA, or at the end of it, like the word teach. But we don't pronounce with the ch. It's kind of a guttural back of the throat, like a yuck, yuck. Or even more honorable, Captain Tadariak is how we would pronounce it. A lot of times we kind of drop it off just because of how fast we speak with it. But you're going to hear a lot of words that would end or in the middle of it, or even start with a cut sound. But you gotta make sure that when you're writing it and when you're sounding it out, you're giving it that difference, that cut. Tazariak, Haftaza, yuck. Like you're almost spitting something up on them. Pause. I don't think that means. But abagada hawazaka. Ha. Yeah. Now this is the K. The ka. Now that's just a normal K. The way you walk it, the way you talk it. Cake, bake, kill, tank. This is how the K would have been. And again, you can see the similarity between the K here, the character here, and the English K. You can see the similarity between the English A and the Hebrew A, even with the Hebrew Ba and the English B, because their culture came in well after ours. So ours was already established. After so many different conquerings and assimilations and colonizations, we end up having the original script bastardized into something like this. And you're going to see more and more the characters that we had in antiquity and how this system was adapted from ours, was stolen from ours, because this was the basis for handwritten linguistics. So the Greco-Roman era, they still got their alphabet. Again, in the term is noted after their culture, Aleph Bet, and you can find that in the Greek. And we'll get into that too. We'll do a comparison of the English, the Greek, into the Hebrew as well. But you can notice that in their structure. But it's still all, now theirs is not pictographic as much as ours is. Like this doesn't really have any meaning behind it. Ours do. You know, the bull of the oxen, strong. That what is it? The shepherd's foot, the door, you know, the hand, the staple stake, you know, gates, basket. Like this T does not mean what our equivalent of it would have meant. Their G does not mean the same as ours, because again, we have a pictographic background, a pictographic culture of our writing system. They don't. This is pretty much in vain, but it was just adapted for them for convenience. And a lot of that to add in the different vowels that were not in our dialect. And that's where you get a lot of the Yiddish from, a lot of those different vowel sounds, because they had a hard time in their history trying to qualify our construct to meet their needs. So they would look at our alphabet like, how the hell do you pronounce this? Well, because of how they spoke with these sounds, they needed to infiltrate that into ours. They had to couple them together to make sense of it for them. And again, that's where they bastardized our language and our writing system. So now this is, again, the Paleo Hebrew. We're also going to get into the Assyrian script as well. Now we are at Ha, Ba, Ga, Da, Ha, Wa, Za, Ka, Ta, Ya, Ka, La, Ma, Na, Sa, I, Pa, Za, Kwa, Ra, Sha, Ta. Now, everybody's penmanship may be a little bit different. Just the same way that you might write the English alphabet or letters, or even in cursive, your penmanship might be a little bit different. Try to keep that in consideration when you're dealing with the Paleo and the Hebrew. Your penmanship might be different than somebody else's. There's nothing wrong with that, so long as we can identify and understand that if you're writing Ha, no matter how you do it, if it still looks like this, okay, we can still understand each other. But if you're sitting there trying to write if you're sitting there trying to write but now yours is going and you're trying to make that that's not the same. At least this is in ballpark. You know what I'm saying? And the way that brothers might sign their name, just for example, the way King David had signed his name, his insignia, his seal of authority of approval. Just make that a little bit longer. With that thigh, like you got one that's longer, you got one longer arm and one shorter arm that crosses it. But for example, King David's name, the way that he wrote it, which is damn near ancient Hebrew graffiti, you could almost qualify it as such, and that might be a poor way to explain it, but just for modern understanding, the way that he wrote his name, it was just a shorthand. He didn't write it out the same way that I might write out my name, like so. I saw manga bar. Now my shorthand is that. That's my shorthand. Those are just my initials. The I and the God combined. King David and his creativity and his stylistic and his swag and his just magnificence, just cold-blooded as it could ever be. Very simple. Bam. Because if you were to spell it out, da, wa, da. And now we'll get into the different connectors and how to show how it's connected and how it stands alone. All of these do stand alone, so you're going to see, some of this. Da, wa, da. Da, wa, da in the Hebrew. Door, join together, door. You just join those doors together. This is not an occultic symbol. I don't care what they do with it. I don't care how they have manipulated it and what they've tried to use it for. They don't get power out of this. This is our seal of authority to represent whose throne we are backing. The same way that we might throw up the menorah, because that's something that's cultural to us. Pictographic. It's not idol worship. It's not a graven image. Otherwise, you better never draw a picture of an animal, a picture of a house. You better never, have a picture of your mother in the background or your family, a family photo in the background or nothing like that. You better not put none of that. Because if images are idle, like damn automatically, like they're trying to make this, then you can't have nothing. You can't post up nothing, no words, no letters, because letters mean something. It's like these characters mean something. There's a meaning behind all of these. Now, there's no meaning behind the English characters. They're letters. Even though it comes from our dialect. It comes from our writing system. This is vanity. This has meaning behind it. That's why they're called characters. Because they're like there's something added to it. There's a character behind it. There's a character associated with it. Strong, tent. You know what I'm saying? A seed, river, rapids, waves. You got the gates, you got the open mouth, you got an eye, you got a trail, you got a mark, you got a showing of the teeth, you got a face, you got an eye over the horizon. Like there's a story behind this. There's a story behind this. They don't have that. Dare I say that's part of the reason why they were envious of us, because our culture was that rich. To give y'all some time to go over this, and we'll write it down. Well, So I'm gonna erase this. I'm gonna make it bigger. I'm gonna space it out, and then we're gonna give like the vocal equivalent of each. But just so you can see what the characters would be like, what the alphabet would look like for Israel and the Hebrew. And we also have a lot of other Shawan Qadash classes. I mean, Minnesota, shout out to Precinct Officer 5000 Maccabi out there in the Twin Cities holding it down. You got Precinct Officer 5000 has how about that headquarters? And damn near the triplets. I mean, you got Precinct Officer 5000 Morale out there in Philly. And if you've ever seen all three of the brothers together, like it's just, I mean, you almost got rank and order in their height. But they all teach excellent classes. Precinct Officer it's like Precinct Officer 500 Raul Bond out there in the UK too, man. So you still see it. All right, so we'll sit with the black and red for this. You can pronounce that. Ba. Ba. Ga. Ga. Da. Da. Ha. Ha. Now, one thing too, when we start getting into the words and we start doing the connectors and showing how they're either connected or independent, you're going to see a lot of times how the ha character at the end of it, the ah will fall off, and you're just left with the H. So it's almost gonna be like a soft breath. It's gonna be like a silent H in a sense, but it's gonna be kind of like a soft breath at the end of it. So, for example, if I were to write the water, I could have used a simpler word, probably maybe a thought might have been better, but this is show the water. So this is thank you. Actually, that's probably more in parentheses, but we get thanks. It'll just let them know, hey, thank you. So what? Thank you. So now in the Hebrew, you're gonna spell that out. Ta, wa, da. Now, if you look here, you're gonna have the tha here, the wa here, the da, and the ha. But again, that drops off from the end of it. So this stands alone. This stands alone. These two are joined. So it's not going to be tha-wa-da ha, tha-wa-da. Now at the end of that da, it's going to be like a breath at the end of it. Just to still have that included. It's still going to be pretty much a silent H, but it's going to have that breath at the end of it. And again, we'll get into more of the minutiae details as we get into more advanced classes. Which is why I'd also always recommend checking in with some of the other regions and their live Shawan Qadash classes, because some of them may be already further developed. If you need a refresher, recourse, welcome to join us. Otherwise, in the Milwaukee area, we're going to start off here. So we got ba, ga, da, ha, wa. Wa. Za. Cha. Captain Tazaryak. Captain Hatazar. Tabak Ganas. Tabak Ganas. Ha. Ta. Ya. That's really big. I'm trying to save some room. Ha. La. Looks like we're getting smaller. La. There. Ma. And now one thing that you're gonna find too, we're gonna include this in any packages. If anybody wants to see, if anybody would like to drop their email in the comments on either Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If anybody wants to drop their email in the comments, we can mail you some of the worksheets that you can have right in front of you. Why? These are just some of the things that we're gonna work with at the time. There are some characters that you're gonna see, like in grade school, when they had you writing that your ABCs, they had you on kind of a grid pattern like this. And there was kind of a middle point on top to let you know that this is the height of the letter, this is the bottom of the letter. But now, especially when you get in a lowercase, you might have some of them that drop below. So it might have had, just for example, capital A. Let's do that. Lowercase a, capital G, lowercase g, and how it drops below that line. That's going to be a similar thing that goes on, especially in the Assyrian dialect, or in the Assyrian script. You're going to see that in the Assyrian script, where they're not all on the same plane like this. Some of them even rise above. So I guess just for example, if we were to extend this, in the Assyrian script, the la is going to start off kind of higher than the rest of it, and then fill in that gap. At the end of the word, you might have the na. It's going to drop below. Same thing with the ka. You're going to have a longer arm, similar to the na, just a short arm, but similar with that tail. It's going to be a longer tail. It's going to drop below that profile. So now again, we can email some of the literature to you. Drop your email address in the comment section, and we'll send these out to you. Otherwise, just tune in the class, and we'll just work through this together. Now we got Abba Gada Hawa Zakataya Kalama Na. Na. Sa. I'm just gonna rush through this real quick. Sa. I. Ha. Za. Wa. Ra. Sha. Ta. See this coming through on the board. Can't went to bed. Yeah, we just gotta work on the lighting a little bit. Work on the lighting. Shout out to Morocco Pod, that's the car. Shalom sis, y'all tomorrow I thought about seeing y'all shot. Oh, I know that, brother. Good man. Good man. So for everybody tuning in, going over the Paleo-Hebrew characters and pronunciation, which is consonantal. The vowel, so-called vowels, I should say, is an expression of just kind of like the gap in between, some of the pronunciations. I is not even considered a vowel in a culture like that. So you got the I and the I, but that's not really considered like a vowel as such. Just today, in modern terms, because of other people's language backgrounds, they had to try to make sense of it. So they had to incorporate U's and O's and E's and all these different sounds because of their background to accomplish bastardizing ours. So now again, if you want to include your email in the chat box, in the chat rooms, on social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, Instagram, we'll double check with you and we can send out some of the literature so that you can get started with this. If anybody wants to copy this down manually, it's important to get into the practice of it. And it's like in Rockapot that you can see this clear enough on the screen with the lighting and with the camera and the angle. Just shoot a one in the text, please. Shoot a one in the chat box, just to make sure that we are visible. But it's important to get into the habit or practice of writing it down yourself so that you can keep the culture alive and communicate with your people. Writing your name down, writing the tribes down. And we're going to get into all of these. All right, the water, sis. The water. All right, so we got one in the chat. So this is relatively clear enough. We'll just work on the lighting as we go. Make sure that we get bigger markers too. I thought these were going to have a broader tip. We'll make sure that we get bigger markers too. So now just going over it again, the pronunciation. Ha, ba, ga, da, ha, wa, za, ka, ha. Captain Tazar, yak. Captain Tazar. Ha, ya, la, ma, na, sa, a, pa, taza, kwa, ra, sha, tha. This is again in the Paleo Hebrew and giving the vocal equivalent of it. And when I say that, I mean by how we're writing it here, kind of with the English letters, just to give the vocal equivalent of it so you can understand it's nowadays we can relate to a SHA and pronounce it as sh, sha, sha, sha. Again, the CH with the A, we can understand in the word character, how it has, it's not exactly character, but it's character. And we can see that there is a difference in between the two. Just the pronunciation in ours, it's again more of that guttural sound. Ha, ha. You got ha, you got ha. And again, everybody's shit might be a little bit different, but we're always gonna have these in common. We'll give it another minute. Like, share, subscribe. I don't know if y'all can see this, or get ready for the memorial, for the feast of memorial of the blowing of the trumpet, September 15th, starting at sundown to September 16th at sundown. The feast of the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets. Get in contact with the school near you. If there's any accommodations you need met, if there's any contributions that you can make. We're going to erase this in just another minute, and then we're going to go into the Assyrian equivalency of it. And I think I'm just going to try to erase the black. I think we'll just erase the black. Now, if you were to download the Assyrian Hebrew alphabet like to your text messages, to your keyboard, you're going to see the script, like the printed script of it. And we're going to get we are going to get a sheet that's also going to have that projected as well. So you can see kind of the difference between the script and just the handwritten version of it. But unless you are into calligraphy, you're not going to really have those tools or skill sets available to you to write the same way as they would, on a computer. It's possible, just, that would take some dedication. But now we're going to get into the Assyrian. And actually, I am going to erase the whole thing because there are some, I have to do this in two parts. There are some notes that have to be met as far as some of the characters that go at the end of the word. You're going to see them in the middle of the word. They're going to look one way. You're going to see them at the end of the word. They're going to look another way. And again, that's just because of the Assyrian culture, their dialect, their structure, their writing system that we had to assimilate to because of that captivity. And also, I don't want people to get dogmatic about having to write like such. It's important to know our roots, absolutely. But the same way that we communicate today in English, don't fault nobody if all they know is that Assyrian text or how to just read the Assyrian script. Don't fault nobody for that. We all coming out of that slave mentality. We all coming out of that plantation. We all coming out of that history, sharing the same background, those same records. And that's why we have these classes. This is why we have brotherhood and sisterhood to ease that burden so you're not so pressurized. It's just that one encapsulated mindset that you can't be an Israelite unless you only know the Paleo Hebrew. it's important to know just to get into touch with your roots, with your culture. But don't you fault nobody else if they don't understand the Paleo Hebrew and they're just more familiar with the Assyrian dialect, that Assyrian script. Don't fault them brothers and sisters for that. They coming out of the same background, the same hell that we are. You know what I'm saying? Show them some brotherhood, show them some mercy. Because ain't nothing wrong with that. But we're still reading and speaking to each other in English. So if that's damnation, I mean, we shouldn't be doing none of this that we're speaking right now. But of course, coming back to a dead language, trying to revive it, that is a task. That's why we got all these classes, so that we can get more familiar with it and come back to our roots together, not separated, but together. So now we did the Paleo script. Now we're going to get into the Assyrian script. And again, everybody's penmanship is going to be a little bit different. Just practice it to make sure that we're in the same ballpark as one another. And refer to your notes. That's why we have it. That's why we have notes. That they can be made readily available if you're not as familiar with one set over the other. So now, in the Assyrian, this script, Ba. Even I gotta refer back to just to make sure I ain't completely messing it up. You got da. Just like that, clean. Da. Ha. Wa. Za. Ha. Ha. Ya. I want to make sure that we get this part clear because again, all right now, the confusing part about the Assyrian is that you're going to have a few letters that look very similar to each other. And it's going to be important to be able to identify in between them. For example, the ha is going to look similar to the ka and to another letter. The main differences that you're going to see is the ha has that same like box shape, except there's a break right here. The ka has a more squared box shape, but it's still all connected right here. And we'll get more into that. So, ka. Now, if you were to see this at the beginning of the word or at the end, or no, it's like at the beginning of the word or in the middle of the word, you're going to see this for the letter K. At the end of it, you're going to see this. So now again, the da has a similar look to the ka. But this is what we had talked about before. when you've got that bracket showing the different lengths, the dot is going to fit in there. It's like this. Let me use the bread. The dot is going to fit in those parameters between here and here. It's going to fit inside. At the end of the word, when you see the ka, it's going to have that longer tail, just like the da. And it's going to come straight down, just like the da, but it's going to go below that bracket. It's going to fall below the rest of the characters. So when you're looking at the Torah, when you're reading in the Torah, it's vital to pay attention to little details like this, because you'll see the da here again being lined up with the rest of the other characters, and then you might see at the end of the word the ka, and it's going to have that slight tail dropping down at the bottom. That's going to help you identify between the two. La. Now, so the la as well. Let me bring this over. So now the la, for example, you're going to see in the Torah when they're going over the Assyrian script, you're going to see how the la actually starts off above the legs. We spoke about this just a second ago. So you're going to have these normal parameters. This normally going to be the height of all the characters. But you're gonna have to pay attention to those that fall below that line. And like the la, for example, that starts above it. This is pretty much the only one that starts above. This is pretty much the only one that's going to be taller than the rest of the characters. Everything else is going to have that propensity to drop below that line. But just to keep in mind and start to notice that pattern and that structure, that flow as you're going over the text. La, ma. Now this is going to be another one. Yeah. Again, everybody's penmanship is going to be a little bit different. A little bit different. I can clean these up a little bit. Clean that up a little bit more. So the ma, at the beginning or the middle of the word. Oh, that was ugly too. My fault. It's gonna be more of that box shape like this. You're gonna have that arm here, more of that box here. At the end of the word, it's gonna switch over to more of a box shape coming down like this. So that can be that tip. More of a box shape coming out like this. That's gonna be at the end of the word. Now this is also gonna fit in between the parameters. Just at the end of the word, you're going to see this character for ma and not this one. Now, this is also going to look like another one. Again, we're talking about some characters that look alike. These two kind of look like this. A little bit. They could be confused with each other. Even the ka and the ba could be confused with one another. Just how the ha and the ka could be confused with one another. That's why it's important to stay in them classes and study up so that you can see the differences in between them. So ma, na. So now the ka is going to be similar to that as well. The main difference is that this is going to have more of a straighter back. This one's going to be a little bit more curved. If I can do that better for you. It's going to have more of an intended curve. And it's going to be wide. It's going to be longer on the top and the bottom. These are going to have a short arm and a short base, short head and a short tail at the top, I guess, and the bottom. Or short arm, short leg, however you want to identify. But that knot is going to be shorter than this. And it's going to be more squared off than the ka. So again, something to keep in mind as you're going forward, how you're identifying them by the characteristics. This is going to be more rounded. This is going to be more square. Now, this is going to be the character at the beginning and in the middle of a word. But then at the end of it, it's going to switch to that. So now this is also going to be similar to the K. I could have drawn that tail down too. It ain't got to be exaggerately long, but just to make the difference, make the distinction. So you're going to have the K here with that longer arm at the top and that long tail going down. The na is going to have a short arm in comparison, but still that long tail going down. So again, that could be confused with the da, with the ka. But you got to keep in mind, if it's fitting in between those parameters of the spacing or of the height of the normal characters that are going through, if it's got a short top arm, if it's got a long top arm, long tail, you're going to see both of these drop down below. You're not going to see these lines in the Torah. You're not going to see this. Just something to kind of mentally keep in mind to help identify the different characters. The dot is going to sit within those parameters, those imaginary lines. The ka is going to fall below the imaginary line, but it's going to have that same long arm, that same long top as the dot. The na is going to have a short one, a short arm, short top here, but it's going to fall below those imaginary lines. And all this is going to come with repetition, repetition, repetition. I'm going to erase this portion real quick. And again, this is where we get a little thing where things are going to start kind of melding in. And again, everybody's signature, everybody's penmanship is going to be a little different. This is why we got to practice and repeat. Because we got the ma here, la ma na sa, sa. Sa. It's similar to this. It's similar to the ma. It's almost similar to the ta. And really, like if I was gonna write this, my fault, I should have done it this the way I'm trying to. So ta, ma, sa. Sa is gonna look like that O. It's gonna look like the I in the Paleo Hebrew. But it's not. It's not. It's going to look closer to that ma, but the ma is more of a box. This one's more boxy. Got that. Got that. Eliminate that tail. Not that big a deal. Again, if you know what you're looking for, ain't that big a deal. But the ma is going to be more of a box. The sa is going to be more of like the letter O. It's gonna be a rounder. Tazak. No, it's like I. This is I. So now the script again is going to look different than the penmanship in the handwritten version, but just kind of keeping to the same parameters. So actually, normally what I would do, I'm trying to be all fancy with it. Normally what I would do, and then you can add those. You don't necessarily have to. I was normally writing it. Looks like the letter Y. Looks like the letter Y. That's gonna again come in importance when we get into other character identifications. Again, you wouldn't hurt to add those tails up top. It's to differentiate it from what we're about to get into. Let me just go over again the English vocal equivalents. A, ba, ga, da, ha, wa. And that's another one too, the wa. A lot of people will get that confused with the na, because at the top it's going to look the same. It's going to have that short arm and then that leg that drop down. It's going to have that short arm, leg that drop down. A lot of people even confuse the za with either of the two, because it kind of has a similar profile. You just got to remember how they're compared to each other. So I'm doing some of these on purpose too, so that you can show how this stands above the rest, how this will fall below the others, and how this falls below the rest of them. So just imagine that imaginary line. This is going to be your normal parameters. These are going to drop below. That's going to drop below. That's going to rise above. This is going to stay in the parameters. They're going to stay in that zone. The da is going to stay in that zone. The ka is going to fall below it. The na is going to fall below it. Get that. Again, penmanship. My penmanship, so at least we're all speaking the same language here. way off track. Still want to have to erase some of these up top. Ah, ta, yeah. So now this is ka, la, ma, na, sa, I, ha, ta, qua, ra, ya. The lock here for everything being that close together. But I still wanted to keep everything up on board at the same time to again go over some of the examples and how to identify some of the different characters just all at once. We'll get into some of them that look alike and we'll separate them, but just kind of see it on a broad board. Take a look at it here. Yeah, that's more or less it. Now, again, some of these, this would fall within the parameters. This one's going to drop down. That would fall in. That'll drop down. Now, even this one, just like how the la, that top part starts off high, but then the rest of it falls in. The qua, that's going to have a tail that falls short. And now this might even be confusing with, if you look at the Paleo Hebrew tazah, it's got a similar kind of style, kind of frame to it. Now, again, some of these, you got to remember, take on a different form depending on where they're placed at in the word. There's four. So these four. They take on a different form. And again, this will fall within the parameters. That's going to drop below it. Falls in, drops below. Falls in, drops below. Both of these, they're going to be right in that, right in those imaginary lines. The knot here, similar shape and form to the Ka, except that this is more rounded off. It's got a larger or longer top and bottom, but it's more of a, it almost looks more like a C. It's more curved. This is a little bit more boxy and shorter top, shorter bottom. The side, you got the mod here, again at the beginning or in the middle, more boxy. Same thing with at the end of the term, at the end of the word. Similar form. This is more of a circle. This one's more of a box. The shop almost looked at damn near identical to, well, it's a bit of a reach, but very close to the paleo shop. That same wheel. Give that another minute. That's still legible if you can still see it clearly on the board. Type a 1 in the chat, please. Type a 1 in the chat. It's still legible if you can see it without the glare. Focus on the camera. Clear. On my end, it looks pretty good. Let's see what it looks like from y'all. Just got to work on some of the lighting. Give it another minute on the board. All right, we can erase this. Now we're going to start off in this next wave just to show the correlation between the two, between the paleo and the Assyrian. So you got A and paleo. You've got I in the Assyrian. Now, pictographically, they ain't gonna look the same. In the Assyrian, that my understanding, that was not a pictographical language, especially in their writing system. That's their script versus ours. And that is I. I can have Ba. Ba. In the paleo, you're really not going to confuse any of these. In the paleo script, you're really not going to be able to confuse any of those. Just unless you're unfamiliar with them. Probably the closest to that we get is the Ba and the Ra, maybe. Or even the La and the Ga. Maybe if you just kind of got them upside down or something. But for the most part, with the paleo script, you're not going to get any of them confused. They are very different from one another. In the Assyrian script, you're going to see similarities. So, Ba, Ga. Ga. See that clearly? Definitely that markers for this. In the meantime, start gearing up for the feast of the memorial of the blowing of the trumpets, man. Get in contact with the school near you. See what's all going down. We're gonna be eating over here, man. But who knows? We might join up with another city. We might join up with Chicago or something like that. Otherwise, we do got enough brothers and sisters here in Milwaukee that's worth just keeping it here. Not everybody can travel. You know, and that's what's so important and powerful about building up your own zone. So that the brothers and sisters that are around you, that are local to you, they got a place that they can easily access. So that you ain't got to go to, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours away to go congregate. It's like if you're even using that word, it feels like too bit of a Christian term. Just to go kick with your brothers, man. You ain't gotta drive half a day just to go see some people. And that's why it's important to build up your cities, your zones, so that it becomes a familiarity where we live too. We live in Milwaukee. I don't live in Green Bay, but Green Bay can come here, or Green Bay can go to Twin Cities, Minnesota. It's damn near. It's almost the same amount of time between like Green Bay to Minnesota and Green Bay to at least Chicago. Yeah, give or take, right, or about the same amount of time. But that's why it's important to start building up familiarity in Green Bay and on the reservations. Like we still got Operation Reservation coming up too. This is the 3rd annual Operation Reservation. So it's something that we just build amongst each other to keep that familiarity, to keep that brotherhood and sisterhood localized, so that we can build that foundation in our neck of the woods, while other brothers and sisters are building up their areas. So Chicago can focus on Chicago. St. Louis can focus on St. Louis. Detroit can focus on Detroit. Canada can focus on Canada, while Wisconsin is focusing on Wisconsin. With the help of all of our brothers and sisters around us too, because we ain't lax about it. Like we'll go to Chicago, we'll go to Detroit, Ohio, we'll go to New York, we'll go to Texas, we'll go to Cali. Depending on what the needs, need to be met. We'll travel around and back each other up. But it's also good and customary to just, get to know the people that are around you and build up your zones. So we got got. Yeah. Ha. Now again, some people might confuse even the ha with the da, just because of that character right there. Same thing with the ba, just because of this. The main differences that you're gonna see is that like with the ba, it's more rounded off at that corner. With the da, it's more square, it's sharp. Similar with the ha. Pretty much the same format as the ba. Rounded corner there, that rounded arm. But then it's also got this leg over here, but it's not connected. There's that separation in between the two. And this doesn't have it. This doesn't have it. But it does have that one profile here in common. That right angle right there. It does have that in common. So things that, again, to take into consideration, looking at the letters and the characters, I should say, to see what the differences are. Just to make sure that nobody's thinking that drops below, because all of these are going to be on that same imaginary line. Abagada hawa. 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 Just play on words. Wa. Wa. A bit more. Make it match top to bottom. I believe that kind of would have been a shorter top. But wow. Again, you can see how pretty much all of these, you know what I'm saying, ain't no relation. They don't look really nothing alike. That'd be a reach between the hot and the dot. Be a reach to try to get them confused. But it's a little bit more understandable when you're looking at this character. And then you got this character. Like a beer, like this is really short actually. Just a quick arm. Get that it's not going to be as wide as this, or even as this. Like this is gonna kind of match up with that. So let me actually draw that out. Show it in comparison. Realistically, it's pretty much this side of the high or the bottom. Pretty much that. Now you got the base over here. You got that leg over here. This one a lot shorter on top, but same style as those. So that's understandable if they get confused. That's why you just gotta, check them out, study, practice, and just keep on studying, keep on practicing. Again, we got a lot of schools that hold these same classes every Friday. We're gonna be kicking these off in Milwaukee every Friday, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Every Friday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're gonna move on to za. Again, you can see how that stayed the same as what we're introduced to or what we're familiar with in America today as the letter Z. Same thing. Just our script is older than theirs. Our script, our dialect is older than theirs. It's the oldest surviving because of the flood. Not to say that there couldn't have been something prior to the age of Noah, but because of that, this is the oldest one that had survived because of Noah and his family. Everything afterwards, it's a derivative of. We got this Za. Za. And again, some of those similarities from here and here. You can see how that get confused. Just gotta pay attention. This got that arm that kind of goes straight across, almost looks like a T. This is just kind of like an upside down F. So now moving on right there. Ha! Right. Ha! Down here. Ha! 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 Again with that guttural ha. Yuck. Yuck. Captain Tazari yuck. Captain Tazar. Ha! Ha! Again, you can see the similar. Well, first I should say, you can notice how these ain't similar. The ones in the black. I mean, hell, maybe you can get away with those two. Maybe the ha, because a lot of times in Yiddish they want to try to relate these two. So you can get away almost with confusing this one with this one. I get it. You can. A lot of people get confused with this character in the Assyrian with this character in the Assyrian. So that's understandable. And again, they always try to tie in, like almost make it interchangeable between these. But there is a difference. You got ha. And this is definitely more of like that box shape. And it's all together. Over here, it's got that kind of curved box shape. And then there's that break in between the two. There's a break in between those two lines. This one is all together. And it's also got more of that character profile, that right 90-degree. Well, I mean both the right and left in this case, but on that right side, kind of sharp 90-degree, same to that dot character. Just got that straight cut. It's not curved. It's not curved like the ba, like the ha, like the wa. You don't think ga. It's got that straight edge. Straight edge. We're gonna move on to ta. 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 And again, you can see some of the characteristics that could be easily eased. I mean, you almost have to search for this too, but between that ta and the ha, between these two, the ta and the ha, a lot of times that does get confused. Between the ta and the ha, those can be confused. A little bit, a little something. More than these two. Go to ya, 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 ya. That one you pretty much can't get confused with nothing. In the Syrian, ya, like that's it. That is it. It is that simple. That one is easy. If you struggle with that one, I don't know what to tell you. Now you can also see kind of the similarities between these two characters. You know, it's missing a little bit in comparison. It's almost like, they started and they were like, you know what, that's good enough. Okay, we'll just stop right there. Now, some of these I'm going to skip because we've got like the beginning of the word and then the ending of the word. So I want to share those on a separate. We're gonna erase this and then we'll bring those forward too. I try to knock people out of order, but if you copy down the same order that we had done before, then we'll be able to kind of copy paste these together. We got ba ga da awa za ka ta ya. We're gonna skip la. We're gonna skip sa. Ha ta za. We're gonna skip ka. Put this over to the side right now. We might as well include it. There you got top. Now we got cop. Cop. So now you can see the familiarity here. So these kind of has that same background. It's a little addition there, little addition here. It's changed up a little bit. We're gonna go to lot. La. La. You can see how if you just were to introvert that or invert, yeah. You're gonna see that similarity between the English letter and the Paleo Hebrew character. And this is la. 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 Ma. 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 And really, I don't know if I solidify this or not, but for the most part, all of the Paleo Hebrew falls on the same imaginary line. The ma and the na, that tail that drops down, that would fall below that imaginary. The rest of these would stay in it. But that tail for the ma and the na, that would definitely fall below. And it ain't gotta be, dramatic, just noticeable, just to keep up with the stylistic chip of our forefathers. Keep in tone with it. Leave this up for 1 second, well, a minute or two, let y'all copy it down. And we'll erase that and move on to the last few before we close out. And again, you can contact, listen, ISUPK No Cowards Minnesota. You got Precinct Officer 5000 Maccabi running an excellent Shawan Qadash class every Friday starting at 7 p.m. You got Precinct Officer 1000. It's like at 5,000. How's a hop out there headquarters? I'm still not too familiar with the East Coast, West Coast, Pacific, Central Standard Time time zones, but I believe they kick it off at 9 o'clock in their zone. So in the Midwest, Central Standard Time, that's gonna be like 7. You also got Precinct Officer 5000 Marah out there in Philly every Friday about the same time. You got Precinct Officer out there in the UK 500 Raul Bond. I'm not even trying to guess what time zone, how their system works. You're gonna have to talk to that, bro. I don't even know. Ain't even gonna try to guess. But if you were to type into YouTube ISUPK Shawan Qadash, you find these classes all over the place, from the East Coast to the West Coast, in between Canada. I don't know if they had started one necessarily, but you find classes all over. It's like in 1 second. Got classes all over the place. a couple more seconds to write these down. Show the comparisons. Again, penmanship might change depending on who you are and how you write. Just to get familiarity. And that's another good reason about checking out different classes, to see how somebody else's penmanship might be, so that you can, kind of just maintain that average at least. But like, I know, just because of our familiarity with it, because of the classes with Admiral McCoppy and Adawan Hazahab and Adawan Murat and Officer Raul Bond, because I've seen this so many times, almost despite what their penmanship might be, I'm gonna know what they write. And that just comes with practice. You got to stick with it. You got to stay at it. And we talking about a culture that was taken from us. I got you. Yes, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to rebuild on something that they took from us, that they destroyed. We weren't allowed to speak Hebrew. We had to speak in their tongue. We had to write in their script. We couldn't use our own. If you go in the book of the Maccabees, it talks about how it was illegal to profess yourself to be a Jew, to observe the Sabbath, to observe our high holy days and feasts. A lot of this stuff got knocked out of our history, swept under the rug. That's why we are here in these classes, to keep it going, so that more and more we can teach our kids this language. As fast as we lost the language, like, and not to say that this is a good thing necessarily, or good or bad, but like how our people, Hispanic tribes, had learned Spanish. We're not Spaniards. Learn Portuguese. We're not Portugal. But because of their colonization and dominance over our people, our land in those times, we had to assimilate to their way of life, to their language. And that happened over a few generations. You had to kick out not just kick out. You had to murder. You had to kill off the elders of the community, the fathers mainly, the men mainly, and put the women in submission so that they don't teach their kids this language. And a few generations later, I mean, it's all dead. Like, my pops was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. His first language is Spanish. He's got broken English. But because we didn't spend enough time around each other, and I didn't grow up in that community, I don't know how to speak Spanish. That's one generation removed. You got some families where the head of the family, grandpa, fluent Spanish, English was a second language. The next generation, the father, kind of half and half. The next generation, the son, it's more English, less Spanish. Next generation after that, I mean, it's damn near all English, and we can order food at Taco Bell. Like, that's where I'm at with it. So it doesn't take that far to remove the language from the people and replace it with something else, because that's the dominant language barrier that's in place right now. It's blocking you from your roots, from your culture. So now we're trying to reverse that. We're trying to bring it back home. And it's going to take some generations to get this down right again. A lot of us are, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and plus, trying to relearn a whole language. And it can get tough. But that's why we have these classes. And that's why we got these diligent brothers that are going to keep these classes alive. And we're going to keep on passing it down and passing it to the next man, passing it to the next man. And you're going to see more and more how it's going to be more regular. It's gonna be more comfortable. The salutes, the greetings, the prayers. A lot of people that are out there right now kind of speaking so-called fluent Hebrew, they're speaking Yiddish. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Right. Right. We're gonna erase these. It takes time, it takes patience. And there's nothing wrong with learning different languages too. Listen, if you wanna speak Chinese, no sweat. Go study some Chinese. Go reach our people out there. Dennis Rodman siblings, you know what I'm saying? Go speak some Vietnamese to somebody. If you can find them. Go to a school out there in Vietnam. There's nothing wrong with that. I just went it with ma. Nah. Nah. I think we're gonna write a little bit bigger now just because we ain't got as many to go through, but I still want to save some time and space to show again like those similarities. The ones that you're gonna possibly always get confused with when you're reading in the Torah. That's again written in the Assyrian script. But we don't have nah. This is another one that's gonna fall below those parameters. Those imaginary lines. Nah. So like the tail end here, it's gonna fall below. In the Assyrian, in the beginning or the middle of the word, or like in between the word, it's gonna fall within those imaginary lines. At the end of it, it's gonna have that short tail on top, and that the short arm on top. The rest of the tail, that leg is gonna fall below the line. Yeah, sa, sa, sa. Sa. Now again, how that looks very familiar to the ma, to the M equivalent, especially in the Assyrian. It was very close to it, but this is more of an O. It's more of a circle. The other one is more of a box. This is sa. I. So now the Paleo I and the Assyrian sa. You want to make sure that you can identify them separately. You know, this has got that little tail, that little colic at the top. This is just a normal circle. And then in the Assyrian, looks completely unrelated. Looks completely unrelated. That's why the Assyrian is not a pictographic language like that. All right. Pa. You're right. Pa. And this one, again, these share characteristics. I was like, I should want that in red, my fault. These share characteristics. But this is just like a straight top, sharp corner here, 90-degree angle there, and then just hook like a J. This one, similar to the K in the Assyrian, is we kind of coming over. You got this arm that drops down, and kind of bent foot there. Likewise, when you're going to do this at the end of the word, so similar again to the na in that sense. Kind of curves over, just real quick, real short, drops down below that imaginary line. Same thing with the pop. Just got a broader top, same long tail. Falls beneath that imaginary line. Got that little arm right there. This is the pop. You got Tazah. I want to make that bigger. Tazah. Tazah. You can kind of see a similarity even in between these three. Because the mark's like a trail. You can kind of get that inference. The trail and how the trail zips off of that. Same thing here. Again, even though the Assyrian is not really pictographic language or dialect or script, just visually, I want to just to keep it visual, just to see how that looks more like each other than at least anything else. It'd be hard to get that confused except for that letter I. This is the one that a lot of people will get these two confused on. Just understand it. Now, again, you just got to look at it. You know, if it's got the extra tail at the end, it kicks back, or if it don't. And again, at the end of the word, this one's going to fall down below the rest of that imaginary line. This is going to stay within the parameters, just like this one will too. But at the end of the word, that tail's going to drop down. Qua. 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 Now, I have seen my fault. That's what I was talking about with the Assyrian. Yeah. And these kind of share a characteristic as well as with the qua and the tazah here. Just to make sure you're not getting that too confused, but you can kind of see how that's similar visually. That's similar. But now the Syrian script does look an awful lot like the Paleo. But we can see this is a completely different letter, Tazah. This one, Qua. Ra. Ra. And as we kind of talked about before, that Ra looks very similar to the Da. Kind of even looks like the Ha or the Tha or the Ka, except this one stands alone, even the Ba, but it ain't got that tail underneath. And it's got that kind of rounded edge. The Da is more straight like that. Ra is rounded off. Da, Da's got that corner, it's got that straight. Got that crisp 90-degree edge. Shot. Shot. Almost like it. That was a little much. Shot. Shot. Again, similar. Like how, like the meaning behind this shot as the visual is not the same meaning behind how the Assyrians had their script. Like that. Shot. Thought. Thought. Give it a couple minutes with this and see the difference again. Compare and contrast. Compare and contrast. And again, your penmanship might be a little bit different than somebody else's. That's okay. But it's also a good thing to look at different schools. You know, write with somebody else even. Tune in the class and show how you write it. See how we might write it individually, just to make sure that we all in the same ballpark, so that we can recognize each other like what we're saying. Because you might try to spell a word and then you got a rock in there, but because of somebody's unfamiliarity with it, they might look at it and it's a wow. So because these would have been the same size, lengthwise or height-wise, I should say, but the tops would have been different. But it's that same kind of curvature. It's that same style. So you might have meant rock, but they look at it like wop because of just the way you wrote it. So make sure that if you're gonna so we got the da, ka, na, wa, ra. My fault, really, really this one, the ka, should have been more crisp like the da. Still with that long tail though. So when you're writing it out, you want to make sure that you're being deliberate in how you're signing everything. Because they can be easily mixed up. And you might end up, spelling a word or a name completely wrong without intentionally doing so. Especially when you're reading in the Torah, because again, that's just the Assyrian script that's available to us right now. It's very important to understand or how to identify the different characters, the different letters. So again, you might have ha. Ha. Stop. It's going to be important to be able to identify in between them. That ha, rounded edge, there's a break in that arm. The ta, boxed up, squared up on both sides. Ta, rounded edge, no break in that arm. That other tail that's got a kick to it. I'm saying, like, this arm got a foot. Things to keep in mind. Because in the paleo, again, they're pretty much all indistinct from one another. It's like distinct from one another. You can't really mess them up. The Assyrian is where a lot of people's gonna have problems when you're reading in the Torah. So again, if you need a copy of the alphabet, include your email into the chat, whether you're with us on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Instagram. And then we can email you a copy of the ISUPK's official alphabet character breakdown. And feel free to tune into other classes, whether it's live or there's a bank. There is a bank of studies and videos available to you. So if you can't catch a live class, you can definitely catch one from some years ago. And if you made just like a whole video log of past videos for just Shawan Qadash in itself, you can date this back to, I've been in school for about 8 years. I remember when General, and I think he might have been the captain at the time, but General Kobal Ma, he was our Shawan Qadash teacher. This is back in like 2014, 2015. So we've got videos dating back to then and beyond from different zones every week for years. Same thing with brotherhood classes, law classes, the history classes, the Sabbath services. There's no excuse to not be able to regain, knowledge on this. But we're gonna clip the rest of the class tonight. Appreciate y'all joining us. Join us again next Friday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. ISUPK Milwaukee. Shalom Israel. Yah B'Shem Yashar Baruch Thumb. Yah Shemar Allah Thumb B'Shem Yahushua. Shalom.